Hi all, I witnessed a very exciting draw today. So Magnus Carlsen was playing black in round 3 of the Pearl Springs chess tournament. So he's playing one of the strongest Chinese players in the world, Wang Yue. So basically Wang Yue played d4, Carlsen played knight f6. After c4, g6 was played. So this gives options either for the King's Indian or the Grunfeld. After knight c3, it was actually a Grunfeld, so d5. This is a system which Karpov switched to when he was on the verge of major defeat at Karpov in the classic matches. So maybe there's an influence of Kasparov to play the Grunfeld defence. After bishop f4, bishop g7 was played. Now e3. So white's pretty solid with this bishop on f4. Kind of a bit of a London system, but with white playing c4. So is the bishop going to be tucked later on h2? Actually, something quite interesting happened with that bishop, and black playing for e5 later, as we'll see. So black castled, and now rook c1. So not yet developing any kingside pieces, just being content to put a bit more pressure on c takes d5. And maybe c7 will be a problem for black. But Carlsen plays a very interesting move now. He provokes white by playing this move, bishop e6. So is there a gambit going on here? If c takes d5, knight takes. Now knight takes d5. And there's two choices here. Checking with Rybka, say queen takes d5. Maybe white doesn't need to let the a2 pawn go. Maybe white just plays b3, and then black can protect c7 with, say, knight c6, and that should be okay for black. Bishop takes d5. Maybe that's not as good. Losing this pawn. Queen d7. I'm not sure the compensation's there. Although white's badly lacking development. So say bishop f4. Well, now actually black can regain the pawn anyway with bishop takes a2. After knight f3, bishop d5, it's still okay for black. So no big deal. So anyway, after bishop e6, Wang Yue was tempted to play an original move, not a bit off the beaten track, so c5. So one of the problems with c5, it's released that pressure on d5, which means actually that if black ever later gets in e5 and attacks d4, there won't be a counter-attack possibility on d5. So Carlsen plays a move to consolidate that d5 control, playing c6. So he's freer to even move these pieces, so they're not protecting d5 now. After bishop d3, he actually moves the bishop, so he gets ready actually for e5 soon. Now if f3, I thought maybe bishop c8 when I was looking at live commentary today at chessgames.com, which by the way, WGM Natalia Poganina is there commentating, so that's well worth checking out, chessgames.com at the moment. I thought bishop c8 here because now knight d7 or knight fd7 e5 is going to be potentially good for white. But maybe it's not so clear, because as in the game, white played a seemingly very odd move, queen c2, and it again looks as though black could try and prepare for e5. The problem is visually that knight fd7 seems to trap the bishop, but if h3, I think white is going to be worse because of e5. So just leaving the bishop to be taken on g4. So for example, e takes, I think black will have some pressure here. Say knight f3, rook e8, there's pressure for black. So this dark squared bishop would be quite a menace as well. So white didn't want to do that. He did something quite radical actually to discourage e5. So he didn't even waste time for h3. He played actually just bishop takes b8. So a strange move. You don't normally give up your bishops for knights, especially on squares which have just been emphasised, by this pawn chain, especially d6. Often in the London system, bishop be tucked away cosily on h2, eyeing that diagonal. But here it's just been given away. So Carlsen actually took with his knight. He could take with 3 things. I thought queen takes b8 myself, which actually Rybka, this old version, seems to think is okay as well. So maybe, you know, with e5 as the idea. But I don't know. Can white stop e5 as in the game trying to play f4? Is that a disgusting move, or is, I don't know, b6 here? It's going to be dangerous. Probably b6 is dangerous. Maybe even more so with the queen on b8 here. Unless queen b4, I know that could actually be harmless. So white could get this bind on e5. It should be okay for white. So what Carlsen did play wasn't even rook takes b8. After this bishop takes b8, he actually took with the knight. Knight takes b8. So that has the advantage of freeing the bishop to go right back, if needed, to either c8 or maybe d7, if white's going to kick the bishop now. So white did kick the bishop went all the way back to c8, and now, faced with this e5, which would liberate the black's position, white played f4. And it's almost as if there's a change, a transposition here, that white is kind of playing the Dutch defense stonewall in reverse, but has got rid of the bad dark square bishop. It's bad because usually it's stuck behind these pawns on dark squares. But white has got a few weaknesses in the position, which, especially like possibilities of b6, and maybe, you know, these light squares could potentially be very weak later. So this seems a little bit controversial from white. So Carlsen plays the logical classical b6 undermining move. And now a move which I had sort of considered during the live relay, knight a4. I couldn't see what else was white doing here. Knight a4 seemed to fit the position, even though it's awkward looking to put a knight on the rim. But how is black exploiting it? I'm not sure that b4 is that great. Black can continue the undermining of these dark square pawns. So say a3 as an example, takes, and now maybe knight a6 is threatening knight b4. That could be unpleasant for black. Unpleasant for white. If white ever loses that light square bishop, there's going to be trouble on those light squares. So here, can white defend, say with rook b1? Well, maybe black's getting an initiative here, queen a5, now threatening knight b4 again. So that would be better for black. So basically, after b6, knight a4, that avoided moving another pawn, avoided b4, so that's important. Now, Carlsen is faced with white tightening the grip with knight f3 and just smoothly casting, basically transposing it into a Dutch defence in reverse. So he sacrificed the pawn now to speed things up. e5. So he's going to undermine the black pawn now, which has been sacrificed with f6. So here I was considering, why can black what does black have rather against e6? Well, with Rybka's help, b5 is a good move apparently. So say the knight moves back. Now maybe knight a6. And once black regains this pawn, these pawns are going to be vulnerable, and this pawn's vulnerable as well. So that's not that brilliant. Not too dissimilar to the game though. So in the game, white took on took on f6. So he's a pawn up temporarily. Queen takes. Carlsen's got a lot of positional compensation for his pawn. To knight f3. He plays queen e7, so hitting e3, and also hitting potentially c5. After b5, the knight moves back, queen c5 is potentially on. I'm not sure that's totally the most accurate. Let's not look too many computer lines here. So king f2, b5 was played, so knight c3. So knight a6 was played. So this seems to be, smoothly regaining the pawn. But there's some dangers here. It was pointed out that bishop takes b5. A few engines seem to like this move, bishop takes b5. So what will be going on here? This starts to get a bit scary for black if white's getting free pawns. For example, takes, knight takes, queen e8. White could play perhaps e4. And it's not so easy for white here. It's not so easy for black here. It's not so easy for any side here. It's a free pawn to the piece. It's quite a complex dynamic. unbalanced position. But white didn't go for that. Maybe there's a strong move here, bishop f5. Bishop f5, I don't know, it just gets hairy. So we've still got a similar idea of this piece sack. Queen b3, I don't really know what's going on, it's very tactical. So basically, anyway, bishop takes b5 wasn't played, it was actually the move queen d2, which looked a bit odd. I think another engine was suggesting queen e2, so I think that might be interesting as well, so the bishop can go back to b1. But queen d2 is a playable move as well.